let's talk about the license industry and move on, I guess, right? That's always how we can resolve things. And listen, I get we're going through this, but I don't know. I don't know what the answers are.
In all things, we have to make decisions.
Some of it's just really frustrating.
In all things, and Jamie, you're right. This is very frustrating. But in all things, we should always consider what's best for the people of the United States of America, the men, the women, and children that make up our nation. Their safety and health comes first, and then business concerns and capitalism second. I sort of reject your premise that we so worship capitalism that we have to embrace that at the expense of human safety.
Rick, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean,
you don't have to. That's just my statement. And I
understand, but under normal circumstances, our government does not act like you're describing. Under this pandemic, they've said, okay, we're in an emergency. We're going to act like we care. We're going to act like we have sympathy. We're going to act like we're going to give money out and care about these people. They don't. Every day, tragedy to humans happens. They're bleeding, dying, and the government's throwing fucking people in jail for marijuana. This is the reality we live in. So the idea that they're going to somehow be our mother and breastfeed us and bring us to fucking health again is a problem for me. I don't accept that, and I have very little faith that they're going to be able to function in the other side of it. They've proven just in this urgent time of the need to get the money from the federal feds to the states for small business, it hasn't happened yet. How many, we're going to the second month.
But I love you, Michael, but if you're so critical of the government's operation on a day-to-day basis prior to this crisis, then clearly you're not looking at government and giving them a fair shake when you evaluate their performance during this crisis. And look, as a drug war advocate, we've all seen the government do heinous things. We've seen people put in jail that shouldn't have been there. We've seen children ripped from their mother's breasts. We've seen heinous things none of us should have to have dealt with. So we believe in the government's ability to screw you badly. But at some point, there has to be some faith that there are people inside our government are actually working on our best behalf. I look at Fauci. I like this guy. I look at the people that are getting fired by Trump. I like those people that are getting fired by Trump. But
me too.
We have to have some sort of faith in the system. If we just say the system's always going to screw us, then that's a pretty bleak outlook as a human, my brother.
Yeah. In a slightly different perspective, not even faith. There's an objective truth here of the pandemic, and the response by government's been appropriate.
Okay, listen to me.
There's a chance right here.
Completely different. The idea that I should have faith in our government is a for me it's not a
you don't have to have faith in the government. You don't maybe you see people, because we can change it, and this is an opportunity with this pandemic. It's an opportunity for us to all step up and figure out a way to change the basic way things have been operating.
That's different. That's different than what's being said here. Having faith in the existence of what's happening is something completely different. I agree with you, because really what I'm seeing from this pandemic, if we're not all seeing, is that it has exposed how terrible our fucking government is. How awful we've been governing ourselves. How all these terrible things are taking place that are being exposed now. The number of cases that aren't really essential, that just go ahead and fucking don't come to court, we'll see you whenever we decide. The people in jail that just get released. The fact that all of our medical supplies are being built in China so companies can save 2 cents on the dollar, and we can't even get them into the country for the people that aren't affected by the COVID virus. These are problems. This is our government. These are problems that they never thought about. They should be held accountable for. And the idea that they're going to have a solution for me on the other end of this and somehow give a shit about not me, but any of you, any of them, any of the populace, the thing you're talking about, Rick, the people, they don't give a fuck about the people, because we land here today. It's a bit of trail of, we don't give a fuck about you. We give a fuck about corporations.
Michael, everybody that votes in every election everywhere disbelieves what you just said. We all believe that there's a role for us to play in government, and that we participate in government with the expectation that benefit is going to come from us into society. So I know it's difficult, man, in our role, and especially what you've seen as an attorney dealing with this so long. But I mean,
and in this particular situation, you have a governmental response to a scenario that we can identify and substantiate, and it's reasonable based on what we know. If this now, when you say arbitrary, and you're talking about that before, maybe the governor takes some things too far, doesn't do enough somewhere, but generally to respond and to lock things down and to do what it takes to get this under control is not unreasonable. And it doesn't mean it's going to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie and Rick, you guys should have to do some homeschooling for a few months. That's all I'm saying. Just kidding. Here's something. Even with all that being said, and that is a lot. How do we get around this news announcement? Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy is to release a list of the untruthful cops.
She did it. She already did.
Okay, fine.
Boom.
Well, why has this not been? Why is this not the
35 of them?
Okay. Well, it happens everywhere.
35 police officers in Wayne County can no longer testify in court.
Finally. Why not last year? You think it just happened the last year?
No, of course not.
It goes on all over the place. There should be a list. They may get caught in line in court and go get a warrant that afternoon.
But Michael, there's an election coming up. Got to look good for the voters. Got to make sure.
Is that the right thing? Yeah, that's interesting. Very, very well said. You know, this is the thing. Like, there's untruthful cops. The prosecutors know about it. They're going to pick a time that's convenient for them to release them. How many times have those officers testified since they knew that they were lying and proffered tests? Even so, and why aren't they put on a list when they learn about the lie anyways? This is kind of like the whole game right here. This is like the Brady, Giglio, we're just going to prosecute you because we can and not play fair. It's really difficult for the government to convict an accused if they don't violate your constitutional rights. It's much more difficult if they honor them. But what do you think about that? This list of untruthful cops, and is that just a political thing by Kim Worthy, or and if so, why now? Why not ever before, or sometime before? Why now?
I don't know. I mean, I think Jim's hot take on the timing is an interesting one, but I don't really know. I'm not inside that office. I don't know a lot about the list. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about it. Frankly, you folks who spend time in court, have, and especially in Wayne County, have a better front seat on what's happening in the criminal justice system at that nitty-gritty level than I do. And, I think that's one of the reasons why you're so passionate about these things, is because you've seen things go wrong in so many instances, and you've seen people get the short end in ways that are unjust, and it grinds you, and it spurs you on to want to change laws and have that voice get out there. So, we're trying to change laws in Lansing as well, but I think one of the most important things that people can do, and the most important things they can hear from me before I have to sign off, is that and this is an election year, and we have an opportunity to vote coming up here on August 4th, and then again in November. I think everybody should be voting for Joe Biden. I think that Trump is a monster. I think he needs to go. I think that is relevant to cannabis law reform, but I also think it's relevant to all these other issues that we're talking about in terms of criminal justice and police reform. But we also need to make sure that every one of us is asking our members of Congress where they stand, and then our prosecutors and our candidates for judge, and our candidates for everything up and down the line. What are you going to do to change these things? What's your plan? What are the things you're going to advance at your level to make a difference?
Very well said. I think everyone's got to be more active and get out and But I want to quote my friend Jeff Frazier, and I maybe paraphrase this a little bit and apply it differently, but the rule of law by definition has meaning only when it is applied equally and to all. And just like the judicial system, the jury system, it only works if people believe in it. And I just, we're in a very strange time, and I think a lot of people have different concerns about how this is going forward, and it may be political, it may be, not political, but I say from a perspective of a lawyer, we cannot start allowing as the norm or accepting the idea that the rule of law is not important. And finally, just to close, many people may not know this, but there was a vote recently in the Senate of the United States whereby one vote short, missing by one vote, the legislation did not pass into law as a rider to the Patriot Act, which, while all this is going on, I sound like I got a tin hat on now, but while all this is going on, the Senate convened and was passing the Patriot Act. Patriot Act, tracking United States citizens. And one of the things that was tried to add to this, which did not get added, they didn't have enough votes, was that the government would be able to access individuals' web browsers without a search warrant, So this would be disconcerting in light of all that's going on and the challenge of the rule of law. Let's not lose sight of the general principles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and some of those ideas that have slowly been eradicated. And oftentimes during disasters and emergencies, our civil liberties are put in jeopardy. And the point I want to make tonight is that the rule of law is important and our civil liberties are even more important. And let's not start sacrificing those under any circumstances. This is not a political statement. That's my rant. I did it kind of on time. I think we take a break and get...
Good, Michael. That was like the shortest rant ever.
All right, I appreciate that. I hope it made some sense. I'm calling. We're taking a break, whether it's time or not. How's that?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time for a break, and then we'll come back and we'll have our special guest.
Excellent.
Hopefully.
All right.
Yep, we certainly will. So a quick break, and then we're ready to rock.
Excellent. You listen to Planet Green Trees, episode number 464, The Barber of Seville.
Or shut.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
We need a song to celebrate.
I think that's a perfect idea.
Dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan, dirty Dan, dirty goddamn dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan.
I just may say I was
dirty Dan song. Dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan.
I've been right. Let Alan talk.
There we go. See, that's my vision of the song. I gotta have. See, Amanda was supposed to catch on and be my female off-key female vocal in the background, going dirty Dan, dirty Dan, goddamn dirty Dan.
And he just got right up. And while the preliminary exam's not over, I think this next week give an announcement that he kicked ass again on a serious criminal case in court.
This is a great background song for Alan's narrative there.
It really was.
It really accompanied it well. It was like a guitar harmonies from Detroit Rock City with Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley. I mean, one of the first real metal guitar harmonies that you could ever hear on the radio.
Yeah.
It was that. That was Dirty Dan's song and Alan's narrative.
And the vocals
hand
on that great duo vocal was both Steve Miller and Steve Miller.
I was doing it all. I had the leads, the backups, the female.
If anyone is ever accused of any serious criminal conduct, and they want somebody who's going to fight for them tooth and nail in court, there's only one choice in the state of Michigan, and that's Comorn Law. ComornLaw.com, 800-656-3557.
Hey everyone, it's Amanda here with PGT News, sponsored by Comorn Law. We're outside of the Washtenaw County Jail right now, where we've got a group of protesters gathering the brutal attack and arrest of the Grady L. family, particularly Shatina. And we're here to ask some questions as to what brings people to this location today and what they'd like to communicate to everyone.
My name is Tony Brown. Can you hear me okay? My name is Tony Brown. I'm an Ann Arbor resident.
And so what brings you here today?
Well, what brings me here today is a lot of things. I'm here for social justice. But the main thing I'm here is to let the people of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw community know it's not about color. You know, this is just another ploy in the system to divide us. But first, we don't know all the facts on this case. So we need to stand together and demand the facts. What are the true facts, okay? Why is a woman being beaten down in her front yard? Is she defending herself? We don't know. So that's one reason I'm here. I want to know the facts. I'm tired of governments and cities running people over. That's another reason. It's time to stand up. I'm here for my people as a voice. I'm also here to tell people, and any voice that will listen, July 7th, 2020 is Blackout 2020. Do your homework. The hashtag is Blackout 2020. We're not going to spend any money. We're not going to use any electricity. We're going to try to stay off social media. We're going to try to live self-sufficient without spending a dime into the system, without putting a dime into the system. Just back in the 60s, when we didn't ride their buses, we want to have the same impact on one day, just to test the system, to let them know we're here. Because we work. We're hard-working taxpayers, American citizens, just like everybody else. And we don't deserve to be beaten, and we deserve transparency in government at all levels.
Hey, folks, I'm here with Trammell, and we're at the Washtenaw County Jail where we have a group of folks that are protesting. And Trammell, what brings you here today?
For support. Definitely the injustice within the justice system and the way everybody's lives matter to me. And it shouldn't just be, no matter what the reason is, everyone should be treated fairly and equal. This is supposed to be the land of the free, so we should have the opportunity to express ourselves and be who we are without being put into a label or, in that type of way. It's just, I'm just here for support, love, and stand our ground. Like, we need that in the fight for our rights.
Absolutely, thank you. And are you a resident of Ypsilanti?
Yes, my whole life. Yes, I'm a resident of Washtenaw County. Been here 30 years. My whole family been here their whole life. So yes, we have been a resident for many years.
So let me ask you this: in your experience as being a resident, what do you notice what is a typical interaction with a police officer?
Oh, great question. Where do I start? How much time do you have?
You got as much time as you want.
It's never really an equal balance. Definitely with the citizens of African American descent and the officers. Definitely with Pittsfield Township, with Ypsilanti Township, now it's Washtenaw Township. Like, I think a lot of these officers needs to have a psych evaluation before they become an officer, before they get their badge, because a lot of them comes from military backgrounds, army backgrounds, and racist backgrounds where that they shouldn't even be on that force or on the force to be doing their job that they're doing. And it makes it hard for people, the citizens, and make them uncomfortable because they can't live their lives, everyday lives, regardless of their background, whatever the case may be or whatever they're doing, but it still should be a protocol where justice is met at a certain level.
Folks, this is Amanda from PGT TV reporting from the Washtenaw County Jail here in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And as you can see, we have a great group of people, large group of people gathered here protesting the police and the lack of interaction with people in a positive way. And quite frankly, people are tired of it. And most recently, we had a situation in Ypsilanti Township where Mr. and Mrs. Grady L. were arrested and brutalized. And this is sparking some of the controversy today. Back to you, Michael.
Let's talk about the stingray surveillance just for fun. All right, because that's a good one. So there's
just for fun,
so I'll set the playing field here, and then we can kind of discuss it. There is a device that certain agencies, federal agencies, local agencies, just agencies that we're all familiar with, have possession of, called a stingray. And this stingray is able to emulate a cell phone tower. And what they're able to do, in essence, is have your cell phone connect to it and then relay the connection to the actual cellular network. And what this allows for is the interception of data, whether that be voice data or computer data or any other type of data. The bits and bytes that are going over the line, that they can be potentially intercepted. And there's a lot of discussion on the constitutionality of a device like this. So, knowing that agencies that we're all familiar with have this device.
Right here locally, I think, don't they?
I would ask this panel of experts, as well as our audience, whether we feel that this is constitutional and a device potentially that could be used without a warrant.
I'd like to hear Michael's take on this.
You know, just if I could clarify, this device is like something that cuts the cable for your communications. If you have an internet cable, it's like cuts the cable and sits in between you and the internet company. So it's getting all your communications from your cell phone without a warrant, and that's the most concerning thing.
So
the other,
go ahead.
Oh, the other thing is try to find any information on the stingray. If you go on Google, you won't be able to find a manual. You'll be able to find some blogs on it. But if you try to go to the manufacturers or get any specifics on it, you're not going to get it unless you're police, unless they can verify you're from the police.
I would think at a minimum you need a warrant.
Well, there's this idea, and Michael probably knows better, but that it's radio waves. It's out in the public domain.
Here's the question. Here's the question.
Yeah.
You know, is there an expectation of privacy? That's number one.
Right.
Because I think, you know, I think there's some cases back and forth ultimately resulting in you have to have a warrant to check someone's phone. You can't force them to give a code, although I think this may be transitioning. I thought I saw another case contrary, that a password, known password is not testimonial. By the way, send Jeff Frazier. Send me Jeff Frazier.
Link.
Yeah. It's not testimonial, but nevertheless, the first analysis usually on these kind of things is, do you have a right to privacy? The second, of course, would be, is it a government intrusion? I think someone else stealing your data, you don't have any government interest there. And you make a good point, because I think many of the, you know, like it's almost like the idea of the trash can, Jim, that once you put your trash on the street, it no longer is in a private area. It's for anyone to kind of take.
It's in the public domain.
Correct. And I think, you know, by way of definition, I'm not suggesting that it should be this way, but by definition, the data floating in between there is out there. And further, I would say, I don't know that anyone has a right to prevent third-party subpoenas for, you know, like someone, like you don't have a right to privacy of the records that Verizon keeps of yours.
Yeah, but that's in conflict with rulings that have been made in favor of corporations. I remember, 15 years ago, that when DirecTV was first coming up, that you could buy these devices that would allow you to basically decode their satellite signal and get DirecTV for free. And there was a tremendous amount of litigation. They were suing people for doing this, and they were winning. So much so that they had everybody bent over a barrel, and they would raid these places that manufacture these devices, and they just start going down the list and suing everybody. So I think that there's some conflict there as far as
it can be theft.
Right there, it's theft.
Right
Here, it's okay because it's in the air. Like this was in the air
This is
too,
like when-
entering my home.
What if I am doing some banking on my cell phone?
Right, is that in the air?
I mean, that's in
They
the
get
air.
those
then.
records.
Does that give Amanda then the right to my bank stuff because it's in the air?
Maybe.
There's a lot of consent
Imagine
unknowingly
the mess that would be.
to what you would think would not be happening, right? I mean, by virtue of having the phone and the convenience of it, I think we're all subject to being tracked. I mean, if you ever listen to these like crime shows where, someone goes on the run, the second they turn their phone on, bam, it's over. Like they got them. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, when you go on the run, you got to ditch the phone forever. I hate to tell you.
But we all most of us realize that we're being tracked. But we all accept that as you said, because of the convenience.
Bad one to start.
I think he's right.
Okay,
though.
fine, Steve. Let's hear what you got to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Most people do.
No, it has to do because
most people.
There is much to do over this mail-in voting for this year.
It must be because I think Trump's trying to shut down the U.S. Postal Service, right? Isn't that what he's trying to do? Did he defund the Postal Service?
It is like a chess game being played out before our eyes.
It's like nobody should be allowed to do mail-in voting, even though it's legal. Oh, it's legal. Well, I'm going to shut down the mail system so it won't work.
Down.
I mean, that's essentially what's been going on. It's a chess match, like a pig wrestling match in the mud.
WWF on steroids times a million.
Yes. And he's been in there before. He's going to win because he is the king.
He's going to win.
He spit on
he's gonna win big. You watch.
Ed McMahon. What's that guy's name?
So.
Not Ed McMahon. What's the guy's name?
I hope he wins.
Who's the guy from the
Ed McMahon.
It's not Ed McMahon, it's something else. It's not Ed. Ed McMahon's the sidekick in Johnny Carson.
Jimmy Kimmel?
Who?
Kimmel? Jimmy Kimmel?
No. The WWF.
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon. Okay, that's all.
Ed McMahon. That was close.
There's an episode of the two of them going at it. They wrestle on the floor, if I'm not mistaken.
Are Ed and Vince
and Trump won.
Trump is gonna win.
So he is queued up for a WWF mud fest with a pig, and he's already been there. He's got
Sam had to have his head shaved. Remember?
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
He shaved the head.
Shaved head.
That's right. Because when it comes right down to it.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're
at. The threat of Donald Trump having to shave his head had him rise to the occasion like a superhero Hulk creature. Like, you're not touching that head of hair.
Function splint.
Really serious about his hair. It's Trump.
As long as he is constantly being challenged about his own personal self-worth, he will always rise to the occasion.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced about that. There was a time when the legislature enacted the transport of marijuana law. Like the MMA said, you can possess X amount, and it doesn't have what condition is not how you're carrying it in your car. And the legislature, without amending the MMA, created another law. Oakland County did not enforce that, oddly. I mean, under certain, it was a clear interpretation, it was later overturned as a invalid. But the interpretation, and Pam has been proffering an interpretation of the MRTMA or the recreational law as follows: if you are outside of the limitations of an adult over the age of 21, and there is not a specified penalty articulated within that law, section 14 and 15 and 4 and 5, I think are the ones that cover it, then you default back to the public health code. So if, for example, there is not a specifically articulated penalty associated with the behavior, like smoking in public. It says you can't smoke in public, right? So it doesn't say if you smoke in public, it's a fine or a it doesn't say anything. So the interpretation of this by Pam has been, well, since there's no penalty, it doesn't articulate it, you default back to the public health code, which is, unfortunately, the way they interpreted the MMA. Like, it's immunity, and if it doesn't tell you what's wrong when you're outside of immunity, you default back to, you're back. What do you mean? I had a card. Nope, you're drug dealer. It was that kind of flip flop. So that is one particular area. Like of course, someone would have to bring a ticket or a complaint, and the prosecutor's office would sign it. But to give people a little bit of notice, those areas, for example, there's the possessing marijuana. I mean, smoking in public. There is there's a number of different issues that come up regarding people under the age of 21, right? The law is for adults over the age of 21, and these protections, you're not prohibited, it's legal. But under 21, game on. All the same laws would apply, would be an argument and interpretation. I've heard other prosecutors. What is your thoughts on that? Just from the outset. I mean, if it's not articulated within the statutes of penalty, how should we be interpreting that for that behavior?
Well, without really getting into the weeds in a technical basis, I guess the way I would interpret it is I will always opt towards the most reasonable position. And when I say reasonable, I mean avoiding criminalizing somebody who's using marijuana. Again, I think it should be regulated, but I don't think we really need to shift from this idea that as a prosecutor, your role is to seek the absolute highest charge you possibly can to choose the charge that carries the most punishment behind it, and whether it makes sense or not. So I don't know technically how would I interpret that, but what I do know is we're going to be reasonable about it, and we don't want people to have felonies. We don't want. I'm going to avoid charging people who I do not believe are engaged in criminal behavior, whether or not the law allows me to do that or not. Because I believe that's what being smart on crime is all about. And why to be wasting all of this time and money and effort within the prosecutor's office, within the judicial system, or the criminal justice system, on activities that shouldn't be criminal, So I guess that's the way I would answer that. Like, I don't want more people to be convicted of felonies. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. Again, want to keep our streets safe, want to protect the public, but this is not about protecting the public. How is interpreting the law in a way that would allow you to charge somebody with a serious felony or even a high misdemeanor? How is that protecting the law, the people of our community? If it's a marijuana charge, how's that protecting somebody?
The Planet Green Trees Show.
We protest properly, we protest legally and peacefully.
We do, but there are other individuals that are not doing that right now. And
Look,
I believe the police are frightened on some level. I really do, and I don't blame them. They burned down the precinct that dude was from in Minneapolis. But I need to say this. I watched the live stream Wednesday night when the protests first began, 2-3 o'clock in the morning. There was a white dude, all in black, dumped a bunch of, what are those flat wooden things that you stack things on? What are they called? Pallets. Dumped a bunch of pallets in a truck, lined those pallets up on the boundary thing to the precinct, lit it, and left. I saw that. He was a white guy.
Yeah.
That was at the beginning of those protests, so who knows what's happening, and I'm not condoning it.
There was a guy that was breaking out the windows.
I'm just saying it's a real thing.
They caught a guy that was breaking out the windows. At the same time, they were using flash grenades to push the people back, and they realized the guy was breaking out the windows, putting him back towards was one of the police officers. They called him.
Was a cop. Yeah, and two attorneys were busted doing some crazy stuff in another city too. I think what Charmy said though is very valid. We're going to see the rapid pace of change come on this issue because of citizen action, which is more facilitated by the presence of cellular telephones, social media networks, and cameras on every damn street corner. It's going to be almost impossible for police, especially in urban areas, to conceal bad behavior, even if they're not utilizing a body cam because of other things too. But I'll make a prediction, and I know we want to get off the air tonight, so let me just run this real quick. The Michigan Coalition on Law Enforcement Standards, MCOLS, that's where they train police officers in the state to do things that's been tragically underfunded for a long time. They've oftentimes looked to the cannabis industry in order to try and fund this, including with the tax that was on medical marijuana, which was rescinded once we get legalization going. You watch. All of these calls for more police training and education is going to renew an effort to revitalize MCOLS at the expense of the cannabis industry. That's my prediction.
I hope you're right, Rick, but I just would comment that most of the time the law enforcement community goes about addressing major issues that they have by investigating themselves and making their own recommendations without any commentary from outside help, done in a very lacking in transparency way. And most of the time they double down to defend their position. I don't know that any of the training still gets us to the point that they can fail and not be responsible and know that and are saved in courts because of these exceptions that make them a unique animal that's interacting with citizens with guns and the ability to arrest and take away your freedom and kick in your door and shoot your dog without any accountability.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
This is Amanda Jocelyn reporting live with PGT TV. We are at the Lansing State Capitol today, and as you can see behind me, we have a group of protesters, and they're protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-at-home order. So we are here as a neutral party. We're just going to come on through here and check out why people are here and what they've got to say to the governor. Hey folks, it's Amanda with PGT TV, and we're here at the Capitol where there are protesters protesting Governor Whitmer's stay-home order. And as far as the police presence, we don't see an overwhelming amount. However, there are a few. We see some over here to the left-hand side of me. There's a few to the right, and then there's some over to the, I'd say maybe 3 o'clock region. But other than that, everything seems to be extremely cordial. There are some police presence behind the Capitol doors to just secure the entrance. No one is able to get in or out. The crowds are fairly light today, but we have received a lot of folks that are very open and willing to have a conversation about the reasons they're here and any messages they may have for the governor. Stay tuned, and we're going to be broadcasting live tonight, 8 o'clock.
And now back to more Planet Green Trees.
All righty, we are back. Thank you for staying with us and watching Planet Green Trees. Appreciate the commentary we see on the side here, but we are now going to turn to Amanda Jocelyn, who will forever be now referred to as Planet Green Trees #1 reporter. You may have seen the segment that was videoed earlier where she was at the Capitol today, social distancing and interviewing people to try to understand what was going on there today. And she's now going to report on that. Please welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. We went over to the Capitol today. It was our third protest, and we were there a little bit later because there was quite a bit of rain earlier on the day. So there was probably a couple of dozen folks there when we arrived. There was a pretty decent, not a huge presence of police. Everybody seemed to be fine and peaceful. And we got a great group of people to talk to, just to kind of understand a little bit more about why they felt it necessary to go and how this pandemic has, and stay-at-home order specifically, has affected them, whether it be that they're a small business or whether it be that they had to put off surgeries, just different things like that. And it was there were a mix of both sides. There was a side that was pro stay at home, and there was a side that was let's go back to work. But everyone that we spoke to was very respectful, and we were really just there to kind of get a feel for what was out there.
It seemed like it lasted all day. I saw some live footage via one of the news stations, then I saw a couple live feeds on people's Facebook. But it seemed like there was a lot of traffic going by. It wasn't clogged like the couple rallies ago. A lot of horn honking. How many people would you estimate were out in front? We could kind of see it from the video footage that you guys shot. But how many people would you say were at the, generally speaking?
While we were there, Michael, we got there after the rain kind of stopped. So maybe about 12:30, and there were, I would say, about 100 people total, but that was including law enforcement and things like that. So 100 people total. There were still people driving around honking and things, but the main crowd was up closer toward the Capitol. There were a couple of folks talking on the loudspeakers and such. And it was not as big of a turnout as what we've seen in the previous protests, partially because of the thunderstorms, I believe. But while I was there, there wasn't any, we didn't see any swastikas or anything like that.
What about arrests? Were there any arrests? I did see there was one scuffle that appeared, and someone seemed to either cause a fight or offend somebody and got kind of beat up a little bit and then ran away. Was there any arrests?
I did not see any. I can't speak to exactly what happened at that particular incident. I think I know what you're referencing. Somebody did create a little bit of a ruckus. And so turned out that he was ejected. And I don't know that he was arrested. I think he was just escorted off by another one of the protesters. I don't believe the police got involved.
So the executive order did temporarily suspend the requirements to mandate an in-person physician visit. Unfortunately, a long-term fix to that is going to take a statutory change. And amending anything in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act is a pretty heavy political lift because it does require the 3/4 vote in both chambers. I have yet to talk to anyone that philosophically disagrees with that, but getting attention to it, especially considering we're seeing the number of patients dwindling with legalized adult use. It's going to be hard to get enough attention to it. So I think that may have to be bundled with some other recommended changes. But I do think that that's something that would be supported and needs to change. I mean, it's keeping with the times in allowing for telemedicine, again, under the same auspices of limiting in-person contact. And obviously, we're not even talking about, in the case of a physician certification, a diagnosis. The physician's role really is to evaluate an existing diagnosis and certifying it's one of the qualifying conditions. So certainly having to do an in-person evaluation is probably not a necessity.
Not everybody has said that, by the way. Many judges have tried to think otherwise, that the role of that particular physician should be more, and they have to be the same who made the diagnosis instead of just finding that they meet one of the conditions. This has been an ongoing battle.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
My point is to anybody that might be listening, if you are going to go out and protest, get yourself with a good group that's going to be, is going to be peaceful and has good leadership and is well organized. Don't just try and hit the streets because they may see you as one of those outsiders, those instigators. A well-organized group will know their people, and if somebody tries to step in and pull something funny, then they'll know it. So that's my little rant, Michael.
It's good, right?
The Planet Green Trees Show.
I would say this, that under the theory of the tail wagging the dog, is she out there kicking in doors? Is she doing, this fucking, no, the drug task force is bringing search warrants that they're signing off on.
Who's charging all these people?
Okay, well, my point is this, that they kick in the door, the cops, they bring the case there. A decision has to be made. Am I going to be the type of prosecutor that gets rid of medical marijuana cases, or am I going to be forced to politically align myself with these out-of-control rogue sheriffs? I'm not making an excuse for her, but I'm saying if it's true, as Karen McDonald said, that it's the culture that they dominate. She's got to be Mother Teresa in order to beat them back or something. And she's not Mother Teresa. She's got no, you know what I mean? And it's a political death probably to try to change that culture. That's all I'm saying. I'm not giving her excuse. I'm just talking about it from a reality of her scenario. She never thought like I'm going to be the one that's going to charge all these cases up to the Michigan Supreme Court about medical marijuana. You know, the investigation that take place, you know, to be brought in, very rarely are these marijuana cases like overseeing the investigations by the prosecutors. That's kind of like federal U.S. attorney stuff. They usually kick in a door, get someone to roll, they go to another place, kick in a door, you know, get what they can, leave some out there, take, you know, file a bunch of fucking, you know, requests for warrants and see if some charges get filed. Yes, they do ultimately have to make the decision, but when the sheriff's department's sitting on a bunch of forfeiture and evidence room full of plants, they can't say, nah, we're going to not sign the warrant. I mean, there's a political alliance.
Oh, that's not true.
Yeah, but Michael, in the Ferguson case, I don't know what's going on in Texas exactly, but, you know, we're very well connected to somebody who he was involved in their case. And the facts of that case are very similar to what was surrounding the facts of the reason he was fired. So in which he went in and took a look at potential evidence before there was any ever warrants or anything like that. So how in the case of Texas, are those old cases in which the police officer was involved and the, you know, facts were similar like that? Those are getting dismissed?
Yes. That's
so, I mean, I don't know. So was there ever an opportunity to ever do anything about that, to revisit that? Or
this is the point I'm making. It is, I mean, they did their own internal investigation. What did it show? We don't know. They themselves decided what was good and what was bad about that investigation. And then they decided of the hundreds of cases, let's say in that 4-year span, which ones was he involved?
There was like 17 that got dropped or something like that.
It wasn't enough. And what does it say for the other officers that were in his unit that observed it in those 17 times that made it such that they would have to be dismissed? Don't tell me that being around that, not reporting it happening before them, testifying in cases that forwarded the misrepresentation in the affidavit, sticking to the story. I mean, all get passes. It's just him and him alone. They got groups of drug task forces, teams. He's the only one. Nobody knew what's going on. That is a crime. If they don't know what's going on, they don't have safeguards in place, that other people don't have a requirement to report it. This is my point. Like, we know all the fucking time that they're lying in these affidavits and search warrants. The courts there give every benefit of the doubt to the officers. If a magistrate rubber stamps it, that's good enough for the judge at the time that you might challenge the search warrant. So when you catch them with their sexual organ in the mashed potatoes, and that visual is there, that they have forever been tainted as someone that doesn't have some mashed potato fetish or something. You know, you cannot call them anything other than a mashed potato fetish with the sex. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. They have been deemed outside of the realm of actors that can participate in the system because they have been caught lying. And those that are participating with them, that gave them the mashed potatoes, that looked away and didn't tell anyone the mashed potatoes, all of them are equal to blame. And that example there is emblematic of the problem, that it is a culture and they protect their own, and it is 100% thin blue line stuff. Jeff Frazier, what do you say?
No, you nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And again, the prosecutor is the key, but it's like you say. Do you think that some of these prosecutors that we run across really have the power to go after any of these task forces, or for that matter, any cops that are abusing? I don't know, man. I think that the prosecutors compromise. And
I tell you, I don't get it. And I tell Michael and other people this story every time. I look at like a case
some of the cases we have, and I think, where the hell did the prosecutor connect the dots to bring these charges against these people?
This is a non-starter. Jamie, what should we expect tomorrow with our esteemed Attorney General? What's going to happen?
Ooh.
Yeah. Give us a breakdown.
Should be pretty cool. It's gonna. As I said, Zara's gonna do an introduction, kind of set the stage. Rick will ask questions for about an hour or so of exchange, and then there'll be some time for public questions.
Are these questions submitted to her in advance? Does she already know the questions?
Well, she knows at least what the topics are, whether or not how it was presented to her. Eventually, I'm not positive if she was just giving things verbatim, or if there was you're going to be asked about the unscheduling and expungement and that stuff. So people had there was some duplicate themed questions. So I'm not sure how that will check out.
What do you think the topics are? What do you think the topics are that are going to be addressed by the Cannabis Caucus? What are their
Michael Thompson and an extension and what the status is with him, extension and inquiry into other people who are in his predicament, expungement discussion, unscheduling. There's other stuff too. There's
forfeiture.
I'm not sure if that is on there or not. I know of those for sure. There's many people who submitted ideas and questions and stuff, but I really know them all off the top of my head. Those are there for sure, the ones that I mentioned. I think there's some banking questions.
Oh, the banking.
That type of stuff. And then on a week from today, and it'll take place.
Is anyone going to ask her? Is anyone going to ask her like what she maintains her accomplishments are for the cannabis? Can she say she's done something like that?
Maybe we'll see. There's plenty of time, but a week from today, I want to say it's like maybe 5 to 6:30 or 6 to 7:30, something like that. The Dem Cannabis Caucus is going to host. I can't think of her first name from the prosecutor in Ingham County, Seaman.
Seaman.
Oh,
just kidding.
And
that's like a South Park joke. I can't even go there.
I was waiting for you.
And Ellie Savitt and Karen McDonald, 3 potential progressive prosecutors.
With that said, I'm interested to hear your take on the Michigan trial court's funding system's conclusion that it's broken. The criminal justice system is broken because the district courts, 70% of their budgets are funded to fund the other local governments and from court revenues. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm talking about this Michigan trial court commission.
Funding commission report. Yep.
And Judge Boyd was on it. There's a number of different judges all throughout the state, and they all, recommended that the courts, that whoever reads the report, that they follow the recommendations. And the point I wanted to make was that the district courts, I know it's one court of justice, but if you remove the circuit court, you've got the district court left, 70% of their budget is paid for by court revenues from the litigants in front of them. And the conclusion of that is that if that is not bias or, prejudice, there's the appearance of bias because if it, it's like the judge that you get paid if you sign the search warrant and you don't get paid if you don't sign the search warrant kind of analysis. But what are we going to do about that? What's going to happen here?
It is an enormous fundamental problem. I mean, we're losing the consent of the governed, right? I mean, this is not a sustainable system. Judge Boyd was the chair of the Trial Court Funding Commission. He's now the state court administrator. I brought him in-house because I think this is such a fundamental issue that we have to figure out. But it hasn't squarely come to the Supreme Court as a legal question, the question of how can a judge whose livelihood depends on what income comes in be a fair arbiter of what a proper, fine or fee is, because we had a set of affidavits in the Cameron case from the district judges, but that particular question wasn't in the case yet. But I wrote a concurring statement, so I'm on record and happy to discuss my view that when it does, I think that's going to be a very hard question for the Supreme Court to answer in any way that doesn't reveal this fundamental problem in the trial court funding system.
Well,
before we had a pandemic, and the state budget wasn't in the toilet where it is now, there was bipartisan interest in the legislature at figuring out a way forward with the Trial Court Funding Commission recommendations. In fact, there was a bipartisan subcommittee of legislators working on what order they would sort of work through those recommendations in. The budget situation now has changed everything. I haven't had an update on where all of that stands because it's expensive, but it'll complicate it a little bit, that's for sure.
Hey everyone, it's Amanda Jocelyn here with the Amanda Report, powered by Comorn Law and aired on Planet Green Trees TV. Alright, so picture this if you will. You go to your local provisioning center or you just hook up with your caregiver and you have a nice big old sack of Mary Jane. So you're very excited, you get home, you get it all out, start getting in there, getting your hands dirty. And then what you do is you're left with the stem. So today we're going to talk about what do we do with all of those leftover stems. Sticks and stems are inevitable. You can have a beautiful bag of ganja and you're still going to be left with some stems. So every part of a cannabis plant can be used for something. That's why it's such a great little gift to us all. And so there are three main uses that we can collect and use stems for later. The first reason would be to make it into some canna butter. The second reason is we could use it to infuse into some topicals. And then the last would be some cannabis tea. You should absolutely not smoke your stems. Not only will it not get you high, but also, you guys, it's going to give you a monster headache, and it's probably going to tear up your throat and make you cough a great deal. So, can you smoke stems? I guess you could, but please don't. So the name of the game is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So start saving those stems. What kinds of things have you done with your stems? Give us a comment below. This is Amanda Jocelyn with the Amanda Report, powered by Comorn Law, aired on Planet Green Trees, signing out.
cited for wearing the mask wrong. Is that what you're saying, Michael?
Well,
Not locking the door.
Not locking the door. Now it's a crime. Now you're a felon.
And you're using a mask to commit a crime, which is they're not wearing it properly. That kind of shit could happen.
That's so the crime is with the mask itself.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This is crazy. It's just stupid. It could happen. I could see that. I don't know. This is just. I mean, who created this in the first place?
When it happens, we'll worry about it.
The episode, I'm sure.
That seems like such a tiny, itty bitty, witty possibility that not even to be worthy of.
There's so many laws that are in the book that are like this that just are left open to
ridiculous
of use of whenever someone could be. I mean, what would be a situation that somebody could be? Why is this in the book? Like, think about it. Because, you know what I mean? Because like if it's got a mask, what is the intention of wearing a mask at the time? I like Batman.
It's been the law since 1931.
What?
It became the law in 1931 in Michigan.
There's a lot of laws that are like this.
Yeah.
Because they probably scared people into thinking they needed these laws.
Michael, is that a picture of you golfing? Is that you in the background there?
That's my new background. I'm switching every 15 minutes. Just rotating.
We had a bunch of nursing home adventures.
Listen, Jeff Frazier is a big fan of being the outside is the thing. Now this is a confusing point. Stay home, stay at home. Don't go out unless you have to. Make sure you exercise, right? Make sure you exercise. Can't go to the gym. Go out. Can't go outside. Stay home unless it's urgent and an emergency. But make sure you're staying healthy. Make sure you're exercising. What? I mean,
you can run through the park, Michael.
You can run through the park.
The parks are closed. The state parks are closed.
I run through the park. You can be outside with not in a group. That's all.
Open the golf courses. Open the golf courses for God's sake. Seriously, look at that. Look at that. That's a golf course. Just kidding. I'm joking. I'm just playing around. I'm just playing around. I can't get someone else into my business.
As long as they stop other business.
Go play golf, whatever. If that's what you want to do, play golf, collect.
I don't think it's
Look, all businesses are affected equal. So the Subway sandwich guy, the housing guy, the guy that runs a dairy farm.
I think that's what we all forget is each of us have our own position on this, and it's dependent largely on what our individual situation is. So my situation is probably not going to be the same as Rick, your situation, okay? Because the nature of what I do on a daily basis is different than what you do. So therefore, the way that this whole thing is affecting me may be completely different than the way that it's affecting you. And not any one of these points is, not a good point. There's going to be a time in which all of these things have to be addressed, including all of the small businesses who cannot receive the funding to continue to operate. And I mean, you're bailing out, but at what point does that stop, and how are we going to get out of that?
And therein lies the real issue, Amanda. And you said it in a much more calm way, I think, that I was trying to get to.
We also discussed it.
The premise of all this is at the end of the day, the government is going to save us. I'm sorry. I am not going to accept that. They have fucked us over for too fucking long. Whatever's happening right now, whatever decisions are being made right now, it is arbitrary and capricious. If I can't get there's 300 million, whatever the billions of dollars is gone.
Golf that you think that the economy is more important than people? I mean, come on, and life and health, Amanda. I understand the situation you're in. I do.
It's not about getting our hair done, Deb, or having.
I'm not talking about Deb.
I'm talking about Michael. He's all the friends about golfing and
Deb. I'm not talking. Deb, I'm not talking about golf.
We can do for a while. We can't do anything about it. If we start moving too quickly on this, we're going to have a big explosion in the wintertime when it's going to be worse in the winter, and we have to do it all over again.
Allowing a bunch of people to get kicked out right now exacerbates the problem. To say they can't leave, it makes sense for everybody's health and safety.
Nobody's saying they should be kicked out.
It's a death sentence if they get kicked out. It's a death sentence. What I'm saying is how do we recover from that?
even though I know it's it's not a political, there's no political courts, but there's obviously understood kind of positions that people are where they're going to fall. Is there ever a time in deciding what cases to take, where like some issues may be important to you and some to say Viviana or somebody like that, there's some negotiating, like I'll vote for you if you vote for me on these issues. Does any of that kind of stuff happen?
Not really, no. I mean, there is definitely, we will make pitches to one another when, if I think Justice Viviano doesn't agree that we should grant leave in a case, and I think it's really important, I might call him the day before the conference and say, hey, hear me out on this case. I want to tell you why I think, we should hear it. And frankly, if you have a good relationship, people are usually open to that. It's just the question of whether to further consider a case should be the easiest task, right? I'm just saying, let's hear it. Let's give it some more time so we can figure out if it's something we need to do something about. But everybody approaches each question on the merits. It may well be that sometimes, people will give me their vote to hear a case, but they're thinking like, I'll hear it, but I think she's, doesn't really probably have this one right at the end of the day. That's okay by me. I said, sometimes it turns out I wasn't right. I just think we need to spend more time with it and we should hear it. So I appreciate their willingness to do that.
Planet Green Trees Show.
There's these tools that are being created. They're not substantively born out of science. They're just being created and validated. I mean, this thing got through. I mean, here you go. So like the whole thing.
Laughable.
The whole
It
thing.
really is.
I mean, listen. It goes to the bigger argument about why people are protesting, why they're rioting, why people are pissed off. It's because
Of course it is.
shit
like
that they
this.
get away
11
with.
people going to jail is an acceptable risk
Gold standard.
out of 100.
Enemy.
100.
It's all good.
My God.
But it's good, Jim.
The
report
point is that
good.
like the fact that this thing is now in our legal on the statutes and it's being used, unless you're educated and know about this, is insane. When you think of the idea that there's a couple guys in their garage that had an idea and sold it to a couple Arizona police officers, like, we don't know what the fuck to do with this.
We need to analyze some
And
spit.
then these fuckers in Michigan pick this thing up and they fucking run with it, give $650,000 the first time around. Who knows what the second time around? Now it's part of the law and they're paying these guys in the garage who made this stupid machine. Who knows how much? And they're locked in some contract and shit. And in 2-3 years they're gonna have.
Jim, do you think we could come up with a test that might be better accurate than theirs?
I mean, we could, but I would
And
never
make a
want.
I promise you,
I would never
you could come
want
up with a
to
test that's equally as accurate
unleash that
because there's no
technology.
accuracy. It would be like this. Let me
You're right,
hold.
Jim.
Let me
I'm
hold
with
your
you.
finger,
I'm
Steve.
with
Let
you.
me hold your finger.
Right.
Yep. Get in the car. Get in the car.
Yep.
You're under arrest.
That's it.
I mean, it might as well be something like that.
Get in the car.
So let's
resisting.
mention this though. There was 100 initial tests, right? 77 of them.
No, there were 77 arrests. 11 of those.
Yes, 77 arrests, but they initially gave 100 tests, 77 of which resulted in arrests, right?
Is that the deal?
Maybe it was
No,
more. It
what
might
I'm
have been
no. The main my statistic, and it's I told you on page. Well, I pointed it out in the section about cannabis, and then they have this graph, rubber chicken graph.
Rubber chicken.
There's 77 arrests for THC, which means a DRE person was there.
Right, but my point though, Michael, is that they issued more than 77 tests. Some of the tests they issued turned out to have a negative response. That would be the difference between the 100 and the 77.
No, I'm drawing the distinction that the 77 times that they utilized DRE and this particular test. I mean, the DRE, in order to take the test, you have the DRE there. So those two skill sets there, they arrested 77 people. When they drew blood, 11 times, there was no THC in the bloodstream.
77.
Out of the 77. So that means they were wrong and relied on both the spit test and the DRE guy or girl.
And they were all wrong.
And they were wrong because blood is the gold standard, and they missed 11 times.
Yes, but my guess, when I originally read this article, it said that they issued 100 tests, 77 of them were confirmed by the roadside. If that's true, that's a 23% failure rate for the DRE identifying who deserved to have the test, right?
It's horrible.
Horrible. I agree, and I don't even think, and you know, like for example, they use the PBT, the preliminary breath test. It's not admissible in court for the exact same reason. You don't have to take it, civil infraction, but it has zero. I don't even know that there's a.
PBT's a lot more accurate than this test, I would guess.
I mean, there needs to be stricter controls around, you know, when and where someone could even be issued these PBTs. And I really think it needs to be based around bad driving.
Well, they can ask you to do anything they want.
I know.
And if you don't do it, then you're placing.
But a lot of people do it.
But you face if you don't take the PBT, you get a civil infraction ticket, and if you don't take the breathalyzer back at the police station, you're going to get a 6-month suspension.
That's a different issue.
That's after you're already
You can
arrested.
wave that PBT in front of their window, their car window, or hold it close by their car window without even, as long as they've been breathing the air. It's all if you put it and you hold it there for a few minutes, it'll register
Really?
alcohol on that thing. Yeah.
Wow.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.